today is commonly called the parable of the prodigal son. You don't hear that word prodigal in everyday conversation much. It's pretty much come to belong to this parable. It's not a magical word, it means reckless or wasteful, which is what the younger son was. But say the word prodigal in a room full of people, not even prodigal son, just prodigal, and most of those people will think of this parable, and each of them will have their own idea about what the parable is, what the lesson is, or what the truth the parable is telling is. And this is what we do with parables. We pull them apart and we analyze them and we see if we can figure out what they're about. And this is sort of what we do with most metaphoric and or symbolic literature. The difference here is that if Jesus told this story, he was making a point. So our analysis is trying to get to the heart of what Jesus is telling us. And this adds pressure, lots of pressure, to finding the right interpretation or the truth that Jesus is telling. Because the stakes are high. And we argue and we disagree and we fight over why we are right and others are wrong. Why my understanding is God-given and yours is false teaching. And Christian churches have split over how they understand what Jesus taught. Interpreting parables is no small matter. Now here are a few of the ways that I've heard this parable interpreted. It can be just a sweet story, especially when we're telling it to children. There's a son who really messed up and his dad made everything okay. It doesn't have to be any deeper than that in order to have an impact on children. And we can take a little step into symbolism and interpret it that if we are the son and the Father is God, then the message becomes that even when we mess up, God is going to love us and everything is going to be okay. We can try on other characters in the story. What if we try to see things with us as the Father? Well, then it becomes a call to be forgiving and compassionate when those around us need that. Or what if this is actually the parable of the older brother? Well, some scholars have suggested that Jesus is trying to use this parable to reach the Pharisees, who are the older brothers, and he is trying to tell them that God wants them to join him in welcoming sinners into the family. And this won't diminish their standing with God. And this makes it a call to us as the established church to do the same. So each of these interpretations seems legitimate in its own way. But which is right? Which is true? Which is the point that Jesus is actually trying to make? Well, about a year ago, I listened to a podcast interview with A.J. Levine, who is a professor of New Testament and Jewish Studies at Vanderbilt Divinity School. And her interpretation of this parable was completely new to me, and I like new ideas, so I was intrigued, and I sat there and I really concentrated and listened. Well, first, before I get to AJ, it's important to know that our readings each Sunday are appointed by the lectionary. And the lectionary this Sunday skips a few verses to go from the Pharisees grumbling about Jesus welcoming sinners to the story of the prodigal son being welcomed by his father. But what happens between Luke 15:3 and Luke 15:11b? There are more parables. The first two, in fact, of a collection of parables. Because the prodigal son parable is not a standalone story. It is the last of three in a collection, a triptych of sorts. The first is the parable of the lost sheep. Shepherd has 100 sheep. He's down to 99. He goes out and looks for the lost one. The second is the parable of the lost coin. A woman has 10 coins. She realizes that she's down to 99, and so she searches for her lost coin. You've probably heard these parables told together, but not usually together with the prodigal son parable. So let's say you're a shepherd, and you have 100 sheep. How do you know if you are down to 99 sheep? You take a roll call every morning. Sheep aren't that smart. They also look very much alike, so you're probably not individually counting them by the way they look. No. You count them. You count them, and you realize you have counted only 99. And then you probably count them again because you hope you have miscounted, which is preferable to having lost one. So you count again. And when you are convinced you have counted correctly, you go out and you find the missing one. When it's found, you are relieved, you rejoice, you call your friends, they celebrate with you. Maybe there's a party. Or, let's say you have 10 coins. How do you know if you are down to 9? Well, coins, even less than sheep, have the ability to participate in a roll call. So, you count them. Maybe you think, did I spend one? You do the math, you check your receipts, you mentally retrace your shopping trip steps. When you are convinced that you have counted correctly, you start looking for a coin that could have rolled out of your pocket or out of your coin purse. You check the couch cushions, and you crawl around on the floor under tables, and eventually you find it. You are relieved, you rejoice, you call your friends to celebrate. Maybe there's a party. And here's where we start to see a pattern in this series of parables. We have 1 in 100, and then we have 1 in 10, and then we have a man who has 2 sons. The younger son, as we read, goes and really messes up, and he returns home, and his father welcomes him with a fine robe and some barbecue. He throws a big party. The older brother, who has been out working, sees the hubbub, and he asks the passerby, what's going on? Your brother is home, and your father is throwing this big party. Now, there was time to call a caterer. There was time to hire musicians. There was time to invite guests. People walking down the road know what's going on. There was time to put together a community party. But somehow, there is no time to send someone out to the fields to let the other brother know what is going on. Because this is the parable of the father who forgot to count his sons. Through this series of parables that ends with the parable of the father who forgot to count his sons, we are called to count people. The very people that Jesus is receiving and eating with, the sinners and tax collectors. These are the people who don't get counted. These are the people who get left out. They're left out of the celebration, left out of the party. The message that Jesus is telling us is clear. The shepherd who counted was wise. The woman who counted was wise. Be like them. Since this is the newest, neatest interpretation of this parable that I know, it must be the right one. A.J. Levine has revealed the point that Jesus is trying to make. I know this parable's truth. Any interpretation before mentioned is wrong. is the correct one.